Welcome to the 8-Minute Rule podcast, where actual physical therapists share clinical pearls designed to create conversation around what's getting results in the clinic. No fluff, no Medicare stopwatch, only quality content. Welcome back to the 8-Minute Rule. I've got Drew and Mark here with us in some different confines, so who knows what's going to happen in the next 8 minutes or so. But we would like to talk over a little bit about the subjective today. But first things first, let's get an icebreaker for you guys. So we'll start with Drew. What is your best conversation starter when you meet a new person?
Recently, I have started using a little bit more of the question, what are you passionate about? What have you been doing lately that you're passionate about? Which reveals a little bit more than kind of, what do you do or where are you from? So it gives an idea a little bit more about who they are and can kind of spark some more conversation.
Nice, I like it. Slightly deep, but there we go. How about you, Mark?
I'll keep it in the clinic. We have questions of the week that we have to spark conversations and debates and friendly banter between patients, between therapists and everything. Example is this week, our question was, are there more eyes or legs in the world? And so good conversation there, because you can then talk about, well, do table legs and chair legs count,
right,
and all the other things.
How much thought you want to put into it? Yeah, ours in our clinic was when you load the dishwasher, does the fork go up or down? So pretty split on this one, which is good. Either way, what we want to talk about, the subjective, is obviously first part of the exam here. You guys have worked through this plenty of times. So really, what I want to start off is kind of more high level. So Drew, if you would start, what are kind of the top things that you want to get out of your subjective exam? You're about to walk in with a patient. What are the big main takeaways that you want to pull from it?
I think the most glaring things are you want to have an idea of what your hypothesis lists are by the end of the subjective exam. That's what a majority of the questions are going to be around. Is there any red flags that you need to rule out? Is this person appropriate to be here? That's a big one. That also goes into hypothesis, but the hypotheses are how you're going to build your objective exam, and so that's definitely a key. Additionally, you're going to look at SINs and primarily want to know severity and irritability, which will also affect what you may be doing in your objective exam. Those are the biggest overarching things when I'm done that I want to get. I can let Mark talk about some of the other things that he looks at. There are some others, but I'm going to let him take it.
I was actually curious. I know Mark probably some similar ones on that you can add to as well. But what is typically your first question? Are you a guy that's going to change that up, or do you ask the same first question when opening up with your patients?
For me, I used to ask, how can I help you? To start out the exam, or why are you here, or something to that effect. But that ultimately led me down a rabbit hole more often than not, where patients just word vomited everything that they have experienced sometimes in the past 20, and weaning through that and trying to get relevant information was tough. So now I go through a little bit of a planning of the exam, the session. So I talk to them like, hey, I want to ask some very specific questions about X, Y, and Z. If there's any point in time where you feel like I've missed something, there will be an opportunity to fill in any gaps so they're reassured that they're going to be able to tell their full story. But then I'll talk to them about the physical exam and just make sure that they understand kind of the sequence of events that are going to occur. And then once I feel like they've got an understanding of that, then I tell them, hey, I see you're here for this body region. Can you show me where? And just start right out with the body chart and getting good understanding of where their symptoms are and where they are not. That's usually how I start it nowadays.
I've been fortunate enough to spend a decent amount of time with Mark in clinic through fellowship mentoring, and that's absolutely something I've stolen from him, because it does really help to streamline that initial visit. You get really good information right away. You can ask better questions later, and they kind of know what to expect as well. And they also fill in the gap, and you can leave plenty of space for it. But that's an awesome way to start it. And so, Mark, I was going to let you know I definitely stole that from you recently.
It's all right. Everything is copied somewhere to some degree. So very cool. So you brought up as well too the word vomit patient. We've all had them before, and I know all the PTs that are going to be looking at this. Some are doing hour-long evals, some maybe 45, some 30, maybe even less than that. Patient comes late. There's a wide variety of how much time that you're going to have on your subjective, especially in the case of patient running late. They were having trouble getting them back, whatever have you. A little more limited on your time for the subjective, and you start getting that word vomit patient. What are some cues that you guys have as Sally is telling you about her friend's cousin that has a dog from Wyoming or whatever? How do you work to really start creating a little bit of a funnel early on when you can see pretty quickly this is we're not gonna get much information if I don't start channeling in a little bit. So Drew, you got any thoughts first?
That's a great question, and one that's difficult. I don't know if I have perfected this by any means. And if the patient has come late, I think that's one thing. So I'm probably going to start off by saying, hey, we have this amount of time. In that planning phase, I really want to get to here and to here and to here. And that can kind of set the stage for somewhere where you're coming in is like, hey, that sounds great. I really want to hear about it, but I know we're short on time, like we had mentioned earlier. So I want to get here. And then as we're getting to treatment and things, I'd love to hear more about that. The planning and letting them know what to expect, I think, is a key for being able to do that well. If you haven't done that, it makes it much harder. But I think it's similar. You're going to reassure them, I want to hear you. I want to know about this. I also want to be respectful of your time and other patients' time. So I'd really like to get this information, then let's come back to that.
I love that. I see a lot of angst in clinicians, right? I mean, it's a big stressor when you're going into a session. You feel like I only have a certain amount of time. I'm not going to be able to deliver the value that I want to deliver. But how much you can get benefit out of just having that quick conversation with the patient. Hey, I want to get the most out of our time here. Again, I love that your cousin's over there doing that. But yes, I really want to give this information. And when you say it empathetically, I haven't had a patient before ever be like, oh, I'm offended that you want to take care of me right now. But said in the right way, you can absolutely get the most out of what you're looking at there too. So I think that's huge.
If they continue to do that, one other strategy I have used is I will go to much more yes, no, closed-ended questions and try to facilitate it that way. But I try to avoid that, but it's necessary at times.
Mark, I was going to ask you, and again, you can talk about this one too, but I'm even more curious about the teenager that comes in. Doesn't have to be the teenager, but that patient that is not offering any information. I mean, you're offering the greatest start of subjective question, and you're getting one-word answers just over and over again. What are some things that you may be looking at for how am I going to get some more information so we can get somewhere with this evaluation?
Yeah, and there's a couple different strategies. Going back to kind of the overarching theme, one of the things you want to develop in the subjective is a level of rapport with the patient, a level of connection to them, and build some trust. And so, if you can establish that, whether that be cracking a joke or demonstrating some empathy, like, man, that must be I hate that you're not able to participate in gym class or whatever it may be. Just opens the door to have a little bit more of a connection with the patient, and that can be helpful to help them open up a little bit. Drew was talking about more explicit questions where you're getting yes, no answers, or very precise questions that you need precise answers to. That can help you gather the data that you need to move on, but it doesn't let them necessarily tell their whole story. And so you can use those questions for people that tell too much, or you can use it for people that don't tell you enough, so you at least get the information that you need. But yeah, it is sometimes hard to get them to open up. I think developing that relationship as early as you can is a good way to start that out. And then, if they're giving you yes, no answers and you need more, well, tell me more about that. How does that impact your day? And start to really dive into it a little bit more and see if you can't pull a little bit more out of them.
I really like that. I think we probably go into a lot of these evaluations with just a list of things that we want to ask and get answers to. There's probably a hesitancy to some degree to ask the question, tell me more about that, right? Because sometimes it can be seen as I mean, even maybe even slightly offensive, but how valuable that question can be. I also think about the reality that sometimes even a pause is actually really helpful. Not everybody processes incredibly quick. Sometimes I've gotten the best information on my subjective with just letting there be silence after a question for one. And it may be 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds. I'm kind of squirming a little bit, but all of a sudden some great information comes out of that. And so I think it's really important just to be able to take time and give the ability for the patient to talk sometimes too.
Yeah,
That's a
another.
big. Honestly,
Go ahead.
that's a really good point. And one thing I see, especially my students doing a lot, is when there's a small break and it's slightly uncomfortable, they'll start giving them options or giving them examples. And if you can just sit back and wait even a little bit, and yes, you can help them along if they're struggling or they seem confused, but giving them that space, I think, is key. On a semi-similar topic, I think another overarching theme is be inquisitive. It's not a list of things that you want to get. You can pull that data, but when you hear something like, I feel off balance, I feel dizzy when I take a shower. Like, okay, what does that mean? This is an example I recently had with a student. Is that like when you look down and you turn your head? Is it when you close your eyes? Like, what does that mean for you? And so you got the data point, but you really didn't get the information you needed. So that next question of really clarifying it is key. And it's not just the list of things. It's what about that helps your hypothesis?
That was actually what I was going to say, is that question right there, what does that mean, is something I use every single day, because you're trying to get data from somebody and or information and their perspective on something. And, you say, oh, how did you feel after last session? Or how do you feel when you go up and downstairs? They may say, oh, I hurt. What does that mean? Like, what hurts? How much does it hurt? Where does it hurt? Like, if you leave it at that, you didn't get information that was pertinent. You have to dive in more.
I love it. Yeah, I think such a good point. I'm thinking right now about the last time I asked somebody to describe the pain to me, and I waited for a second before I immediately started throwing out a sharp dull. Like, it's supposed to give them a chance, and they could have laid out very clearly a descriptor that would have been super helpful there too. So, great thoughts, guys. I appreciate it. I think some good thoughts around subjective in general, and helpful for everybody to listen in on. So, appreciate the time. Until next time.